on PFF's College Football Show. I'm your host, Max Chadwick, alongside my co-host, Dalton Wasserman. We just put out our mid-season All-American team, so you guys can go check that out if you want. Now, Dalton, we've got a loaded Week 7 of college football, man. This is the fourth straight weekend with at least 4 games between ranked opponents. And if you go by my personal top 25, there's 5 games between ranked opponents. So we're going to talk about all 5 of those games and preview them, man. And listen, we are in college football heaven right now, Dalton.
Oh, we sure are. The madness began last week. And honestly, at the midpoint, this is the time, I'd say it kicked off with that Texas-Oklahoma game. The playoff race has unofficially started. You've got huge games with huge playoff implications every single week. Undefeated teams are going to start going down, whether it's a matter of circumstance or upsets or what have you. This is a week that's going to have huge consequences come the end of the season.
And no game has bigger consequences probably than Oregon and Washington. Number 8 Oregon traveling to number 7 Washington, matchup between 2 top 10 teams on 3:30 on ABC. Really, the storyline here is who's going to be the team to beat in the Pac-12 right now. It is a loaded conference. 7 of the 12 members in the Pac-12 are currently in the top 20 of the AP poll. That's 3 more than any other conference in college football right now. And those 2 highest ranked teams are the ones that we're talking about right now in Oregon and Washington. And the winner of this game is the front runner to win the conference and also secure the first college football playoff berth for the Pac-12 since 2016. Also the final, probably, college football playoff berth for the Pac-12. But Dalton, what are you looking forward to most in this massive top 10 showdown?
Man, where do we start? This is the most fun tape watch I've had all year. Yeah. Going back and watching last year's game, these 2 teams are so evenly matched. They both do everything. They're the top 2 teams in the country in total offense. They're second and third in points per game. Washington leads the nation in passing yards per game by 80 yards, which I've never seen anything like that. Oregon leads the nation with 7.1 yards per carry. You've got 2 teams with elite offenses. They're 2 of the 3 best pass protecting teams in the country. Michael Penix might be on his way to a Heisman Trophy. It's just so stacked, right? And we're going to break down all these details, but you don't have another game all year in the regular season with 2 teams so evenly matched. It's going to be a wild ride like it was last year. Last year's game was just off the charts. And this year the stakes are even higher. We'll break it down, but you've got 2 teams that are so evenly matched, and they were last year and they are again this year, that it's going to be tough for anybody to really predict who's going to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned all those offensive metrics. The one I love using the most is EPA per play, expected points added per play, which basically is the best measure of efficiency. And you see right there, Oregon, number 1 in the country in EPA per play. Washington, number 3 in the country in EPA per play, right behind LSU. And USC trails them both right now in a metric that USC always dominates in. So, like you mentioned, man, these are 2 of the most efficient offenses in college football. Washington, like you said, is mainly because of that passing game where Michael Penix Jr., highest graded quarterback in the country. He's our midseason first-team All-American quarterback, if you want to check that out as well. Also, they have the best receiving grade in the country so far this season as well. Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan as well. They have an electric receiving core. And then you mentioned the other side, Oregon. They can air it out with Bo Nix and that talented group of receivers, but like you said, that offensive line, man, is dominant, and they have a 93.3 rushing grade as a team. That is second in the country, and yeah, man, they are averaging over 7 yards per carry as well. So it's going to be an uphill battle for both defenses. I do think Oregon has a better defense than Washington. Right now, Oregon is 13th in the country in EPA per play. Washington is 68th, so right around average in terms of the national landscape, while Oregon is top 15, man. But yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle, and it should be another shootout like we saw last year.
Absolutely. You've got such a contrast in styles, right? And last year, the difference was Penix. He was the best player on the field, a 91.6 passing grade. If you want a clinic on what a future NFL quarterback looks like, you put on Washington's tape against Oregon last year. He made every throw in the book. Hole shots, deep posts, tight curls into zone windows, rolling comebacks. I mean, everything. Every throw in the book was made in that game by Penix. And in the second half, Washington only ran for 30-something yards. They started the game off with some balance, and then Oregon started to shut it down. Penix put him on his back. It was just when I hadn't seen the all 22 of it until this week. When you throw that tape on, you look at Penix and you go, wow, that's a first-round pick. Yep. It's just unbelievable into every coverage, too. It's not like Oregon was running the same coverage all night. I mean, 2, 4, 3, occasionally man, just everything. He did everything in that game you could ask of a quarterback. And honestly, a lot of things in that game for Oregon went right. They ran for over 300 yards. They got an interception down on the goal line. It was Penix's one bad throw of the night. A lot went right for Oregon, and they were at home, and they still managed to lose the game. Now, on Oregon's side, Washington's going to be looking at, we can't give up 312 yards again on the ground. Yeah. Any defensive coordinator goes, if we're giving up 300 plus on the ground, we should and probably will lose, right? So the one question I have really for Oregon is not the running game, because the funky part with it is that when you watch their running game last year and even this year, they're not like a big mauling offensive line, right? Like, they're really sound, and we've talked about them in pass protection, but I don't think we've gone into the run game at all with Oregon yet. They're not like this big mauling, run you over offensive line like Oregon State or, at times like Michigan, right? Something like that, like physically dominating. There was a huge element of last year's game, I think, where Washington can get better against Oregon's run game. Their linebackers especially just couldn't see. It looked like they couldn't see. They Oregon would run counter, and they were just constantly late. It wasn't that they got mauled physically up front. The coaches are going to sit there and tell, especially their linebackers, look, you have to go. Like, when it's time, when you see a read, you need to go. And then there's other times where they're just shooting gaps way before they should. Part of playing linebacker especially is patience. It's not about just sheer aggression and shooting a gap and like getting on the line of scrimmage as fast as you can. You have to be patient, on your toes, and really wait and see it and then explode, right? And they just didn't do that at all. And then late in the game, they didn't help them at all, because all of a sudden they started calling a whole bunch of stunts, and Oregon, once they saw that, just started running directly at them. And when you run stunts and you have a team that's running basic things right downhill at you, then you just have issues schematically. So Washington, there was a ton of mental mistakes in the run game. Now, Bucky Irving was great. I think he had close to 150 yards and forced 13 missed tackles. Don't get me wrong. Bucky was great. But they didn't get, like, manhandled up front, giving up that 300 yards. There was a ton of mental mistakes. There's a lot of room for improvement for Washington's run defense in this game, which now brings me to Bo Nix. And Bo Nix is very good.
Yeah,
not a question at all. Bo Nix on the traditional stats is in the Heisman race, especially if he wins this game, okay? I have one big issue with Bo Nix. He's an elite play-action passer. Absolutely. And it fits what they do perfectly, because they have an elite run game, right? It's a non-play-action passer since the start of last year, okay? Passing grade of 77.8.
Wow.
As compared to a play action grade of 87.5, right? And in last year's game, okay, with play action was at a 90 and without it at a 65.7. The difference when you play Oregon, this sounds funny because, a lot of people go, well, Bo Nix is one of the 6 or 8 best QBs in the country, and he might be a first rounder and this and that and the other. If you make Bo Nix, if you put him in situations where he just has to drop back and everyone in the stadium knows he's throwing, it's not elite. It's decent, but it's not like the best thing you could ask for. Honestly, even last year, that non-play action grade could have been a lot lower, but for one touchdown throw. I think it was a 40-yard throw to the post, something like that. He really only made one big throw outside of play action. It's funny to think, but Oregon tried to win this game last year hiding Bo Nix, which sounds funny because he threw for 280 and 2 touchdowns, right? They tried to hide him.
Mm-hmm.
And in huge games like this, if you have to hide your quarterback, you still have a problem. This is a game, I think, about Bo Nix. You want to be a first-round pick or a third-round pick?
Yeah.
This is the week, because it might be just college football's best kept secret. I don't know. But Bo Nix has just a pure drop. Like, Michael Penix can just drop back. And you saw even last week against Arizona. Everybody thinks they were horrible against Arizona. No, when they got in the red zone, they ran the ball instead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Arizona was dropping 8 for 3/4 of that game, and he was still dropping dimes into it. Okay. He didn't throw a touchdown, but he still threw for, I think, 360 or 380. Nix doesn't do that. Like, if Washington gets ahead in this game and Nix has to start dropping back throwing, that's when I start to get worried. If I'm Oregon, they can't win this game if they continue to hide Nix.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an important thing to note about that Washington-Oregon game last year, Nix went down in that game with a right leg injury, and he played the rest of the game, but you could see he was clearly hobbled, man. And this is a guy who's a really good runner of the football as well, and he couldn't do that with that right leg injury. And, they only lost by 3 points. You can make a strong argument to be made that, Oregon might have won that game if Nix doesn't get hurt with that right leg injury. Dalton, I got to ask you, man. I mean, listen, I locked myself in a dark room for like hours trying to pick a winner of this game, man, because it is impossible. Who are you going with, and who are you saying is the new favorite in the Pac-12?
I did the same. This was hard. This was maybe the hardest game of the year to pick, right, at least so far. As in any game, really. This took a long time, because you've got, look, these two teams are so even. Mm-hmm. They are. I mean, look, half of us are going to be right and half of us are going to be wrong. This is just the way it is. I think I trust Penix more than Nix.
Okay.
Last year, like I said, there was a lot in last year's game that went right for Oregon, right? I don't believe they turned the ball over. They ran for over 300 yards. They were at home, okay? And yet, Penix came away as the best player on the field. Washington scored on 7. They held Washington. Washington only had the ball 9 times last season. That's the other thing, too. Oregon won the time of possession by 9 minutes, and Washington only had 9 drives, and they scored on 7 of them. They punted. They went 3 and out once on a drive that started at their own 1-yard line. And the 9th drive was Washington driving all the way down the field and Penix throwing a pick on the goal line. They should have scored on 8 of their 9 drives last year. So Oregon's defense, their secondary, has to be a lot better. Yeah. The problem is this is a coverage unit if you include the linebackers. Now, without Christian Gonzalez, without Noah Sewell in the middle. So we've talked about they're really good across the board. They're fundamentally sound. Last year, they only missed, one thing that jumped out at me with Oregon's secondary last year, no yards after the catch. Mm-hmm. There was 2 deep balls where they finished the touchdown or whatever. But like underneath, Oregon only missed 4 tackles in the entire game last year, whereas Washington missed 19. 13 of them on Bucky Irving alone. So look, Oregon has its advantages in this game. They need the run game to be similarly spectacular, because look, to beat Washington, it's going to be required to put up at least 38, 40 points.
Yeah.
Anybody. Doesn't matter who, Oregon, USC, whoever, Washington State, whoever plays them, you're going to have to tell your offense, hey, we need 40. They're that good. Okay. This one's in Washington. I think Washington has a ton of things they can take away from last year's game, especially in run defense, that they can improve on. And if Oregon's going to win this game, I really think this is Bo Nix's. This is the moment of Bo Nix's career. It is. I know what Penix. At least I feel like, unless something crazy happens, I know what Penix is going to do. Mm-hmm. He's right now. We call them. If we can argue about with Caleb Williams if he's the best, he's the most efficient quarterback in the country. That's not a question to me. And he can beat any coverage at any time. And if I'm Oregon, I think I do something similar to Arizona last week and drop 8 and sit back. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't bother. Don't blitz him. Don't just sit back and hope that he doesn't absolutely kill you like he did last year. I'm going to take Washington. This game is still going to be high flying for sure. I'm going to say 45-38 Washington. And I just have more trust in Penix than Nix if this becomes a quarterback-centric game. That's not to say Oregon. Oregon is Oregon.
Mhm.
They are what they are. If you let them run the ball and get to their action and do their stuff, they're going to be really, really good. But I think Washington actually didn't even play their best game last year and still won the game. And I like them even better this year.
That's a fair point. I think, what you said is fair about Oregon. Everything went right for them in that game last year. But I want to bring the one thing that didn't go right was that Bo Nix went down with an injury. And that is why I'm picking Oregon in this game. The road team I'm picking 35-34. I think also that the other big thing that I really lean me towards Oregon's side, I think Oregon's defense is a lot better than Washington's defense right now. I mean, you saw what Oregon did to Colorado. Now, Colorado has its issues for sure, but Oregon only allowed 6 points in that game. That came late in the game as well. Dan Lanning dialed it up. They are a very, very well-coached team defensively. Dan Lanning, obviously the head coach, comes from a defensive background. Like I said, they're top 15 in the country right now in EPA per play. Washington is 68th, man. So I think Oregon, with the run game, with the elite offensive line, with Bo Nix, who can make throws when you need him to on play action, like you said, I'm taking Oregon in this game, and really it just comes down to, I think Oregon defensively will make it just enough stops. But then again, I'm picking Oregon by 1 point, so it's not like I'm very confident in the Ducks winning this game. But I do think it for Washington, it really just is Michael Penix Jr. If you're on fire, they're probably going to win the game. But if Oregon has so many ways they can win the game, in my opinion, with the run game, with the offensive line, holding up really well, with Bo Nix making throws when he needs to, that receiving core is really good as well. They have many more opportunities to win the game in different ways, whereas Washington really is Penix and those receivers just getting open and making plays. So I'm picking Oregon in a close one. We both disagree on this one, man. But yeah, it's going to be ultra, ultra tight. I think it'll be one of the best games of the year, just like it was last season. Now, we mentioned that the winner of that game will be the favorite in the Pac-12. Well, this team is still very much in the thick of it, man. Number 10 USC travels to number 21 Notre Dame, which is at 7:30 p.m. on NBC. My storyline, Dalton, in this game is, will USC finally get burned, or can it take advantage of a weary Notre Dame team? Because so far this season, USC went to triple overtime with Arizona, who's the number 81 team in our power rankings. The week before that, they were outscored 27-14 in the second half by Colorado and narrowly escaped with a 7-point win. We showed you guys the graphic before of the EPA per play. The offense is still elite. The defense is 80th in the country in EPA per play. This week, USC has by far its toughest test of the season on the road against Notre Dame, but luckily for the Trojans, the Fighting Irish are burning the candle at both ends right now, man. This schedule for Notre Dame is brutal. You see right there, 4th straight week playing a night game against a top 25 opponent. They lost to number 6 Ohio State a few weeks ago. They beat number 17 Duke a couple weeks ago, and they lost to number 25 Louisville this past Saturday. They're also one of 4 FBS schools that's already played 7 games so far this season. We mentioned our midseason All-American team already, Dalton. That, the midseason for college football is 6 games. Well, after this Saturday, you can make a 2/3 of the season team for Notre Dame, because they're already playing 2/3 of their season, man. So right now, Notre Dame is reeling right now, man. I have a lot of sympathy for the Fighting Irish for what that schedule. They played in Ireland in week 0 as well. So I mean, they went overseas for a game. Brutal schedule for Notre Dame, and USC now has to prove that, hey, we are still an elite team. And right now they're kind of on the downswing right now with all the close games they're playing.
Yeah, I think you hit on the 2 big storylines. Whoever made Notre Dame's schedule this year might need to be reassigned, because this is just nuts. And I know at Louisville and even at Duke weren't supposed to be like big ranked games, big time tight games, or games that you could lose. But in between Ohio State and USC, 2 ACC teams on the road, even if they weren't both in the top 20, that's 2 road games in between 2 elite teams. I'm not really sure. I mean, Notre Dame is in prime time every week. And look, by about, I would say, midway through the 3rd quarter, they were just gassed.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, with, say, if they were both off bye weeks and whatever, I still think Notre Dame, if they were to play Louisville again, would beat them. given, not playing 9 games in a row and all at night and all in the spotlight and all that stuff. I think on like a neutral field and neutral conditions, I think Notre Dame would still beat Louisville. But it's not like that, right? It's in Louisville. One team is charged up. It's their biggest game in probably, 10 years since Teddy Bridgewater? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame coming off an absolute war with Ohio State and an absolute war with Duke, they looked just tired.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, if you're tired coming off 3 big games that charged up all that stuff and so much emotion, and now you have to play Caleb Williams, that's an issue. Now, the other thing you touched on is how flawed USC is. And I think this is starting to trickle into a bigger problem. Mm-hmm. Now, look, I alluded to this on Monday for a minute. Caleb Williams, the traditional stats are great. They're going to be great. They're going to put him they're going to send him to New York as a Heisman finalist, right? He's starting to press.
Yeah.
He's starting to understand, and I don't think it's a good thing, what he has to do to overcome the rest of the flaws, especially of his defense, right? I talked about last year, he was the best quarterback in the country under pressure. Mm-hmm. This year, his passing grade under pressure is a 32.1, which is like, it's among qualified quarterbacks. It's like 155-ish qualified quarterbacks. He's in like the bottom 20.
Wasn't he like 85 plus last year? Wasn't he like close to a 90?
I believe it was 85.5. Yeah.
Wow, dude.
He was number 1 last year under pressure. Number 1, and now he's literally. I have him. It's ranked 137th.
That's so 50 points.
It's man. It's a pressing thing, right? It's holding the ball too long, fumbling, tight window throws. Right now, this is. I'll tell you what. It's funny to compare him to Patrick Mahomes because he even has the same flaw. I guess you'd call it a flaw if you call anything Mahomes does a flaw. Is you sit back, don't blitz him. The first thing, don't blitz him. Don't think because he's bad under pressure that you're going to go get him. Well, against the blitz, he's elite. If you give him more windows that he can see, or you just break the pocket and run, don't blitz him. You send 4, and you sit back, and you just wait for him to do something. This is just the way you have to play him the same way you play Mahomes. It's scary how similar they are, because in a clean pocket, he's the 3rd best quarterback in the country still. I think it's Penix, and I almost want to say Tyler Van Dyke. But he's starting to press. The last 3 weeks, 70.6 passing grade, 2 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays. This is not on the whole, like under the hood, okay? This is a guy who's pressing.
Yeah.
Because he has to overcome the flaws of the rest of his team, right? Now, Notre Dame, like I just said, don't blitz him. 5th most blitzes in the Power 5 so far this year. Now, they've played an extra game more than everybody else. Just don't. You need to sit back, let your 2 big defensive tackles bother him. Caleb's going to break the pocket. Don't let him run for too much. Just wait and see. This is how you have to play it. Wait and see what he does, because you can tell late in the play he's trying to make magic happen instead of making the safe play, the winning play. And the problem is that the thing that's starting to make these games tight, like the Colorado game, like the Arizona game, or does he have to do those things to just nudge them over the line for a win? They're riding a really fine line right now with how bad their defense is and what they need to do offensively. Because their defense. They're playing Arizona last week to give up 215 rush yards. That's Arizona.
Yeah.
You're gonna play Oregon, arguably the best running team in the country. Washington has some balance. I know they're known for Penix in the passing game. They have some balance. I don't know if they play Oregon State, but that would be a matchup problem if they play Oregon. UCLA wants to run the ball like crazy. That's the base of their right. So this is a problem. What they have going on right now, their defense right now is struggling so much that it's forcing Williams to play not out of his comfort zone, but out of line with sometimes what wins you ball games.
Yeah. Dude, his nickname is Superman, and it seems like he's trying to live up to that on every single play he's out there, man. He literally is swinging for the fences every time. Now, luckily for USC, he's basically the Aaron Judge of college football, where when he swings for the fences, there's a good chance he's going to hit a home run. But there's a lot of times, like, and this is the detriment of Aaron Judge too, where you swing for the fences and you strike out. And like you mentioned, man, that the turnover-worthy plays are up. So he is getting lucky in terms of, those turnover-worthy plays not translating to interception so far. But like you said, this is why PFF grades and PFF metrics are so valuable, because you look at the raw stats, you see him leading the country in touchdown passes. And I think still only one pick on the season. And you say, oh, he's still fantastic. He's even better than he was last year. He's not better than he was last year. Like you said, he's pressing right now. My big matchup, and you touched on it a little bit, Dalton, is Notre Dame's run game against USC's run defense. You mentioned how the game plan for Notre Dame on defense should be just drop and play Caleb Williams that way. The game plan for USC is simple, man. Make this a game between Caleb Williams and Sam Hartman. That's the game plan for USC, because over the first 4 games of the season for Notre Dame, against the unranked teams, against the easy opponents, the cupcake opponents, Sam Hartman earned a 86.9 passing grade, 16th among Power 5 quarterbacks. In the last 3 games against those ranked opponents, Ohio State, Duke, and Louisville, he has a 62 passing grade. That is 40th among Power 5 quarterbacks. He went from a guy that Notre Dame fans were touting as a Heisman candidate, the best quarterback the program's had since Brady Quinn, maybe. Now, all of a sudden, he's fallen off, man, in the last 3 weeks. And, of course, tough competition, granted, but still, it is alarming how bad he's been. And, if he's forced to go throw for throw with Caleb Williams, that is not a battle that Notre Dame is going to win. But luckily for the Fighting Irish, their biggest strength on offense matches up with USC's biggest weakness on defense. Audric Estime, you see the guy right there. He was our midseason first-team All-American running back. He leads all FBS running backs with an 89 grade. He also leads all Power 5 running backs with 38 forced missed tackles. USC's defense has the 4th most missed tackles in the Power 5 this season with 79. Also has the 4th worst average depth of tackle in run defense at about 5.3 yards. So Notre Dame offensively, the game plan should be ride number 7, man. They didn't do it against Louisville. He actually, I think he only had not that many carries against Louisville. I'll find the exact number in a second, but
10. I believe it was 10.
10. Like, they barely relied on him. Now, of course, he didn't really he wasn't playing. Like, he had 5 carries Love had 5 carries for 37 yards. Audric Estime had 10 carries for 20 yards. So he's averaging 2 yards per carry. But still, man, I think they abandoned the run a little bit too quickly against Louisville. They can't do that against USC. That is the bread and butter of this offense, and you have to rely on Audric Estime against USC. Because, like I said, if it becomes a game between Caleb Williams and Sam Hartman, that is not a game that Notre Dame can win. But ultimately, Dalton, who are you going with in this massive game in South Bend?
This was a hard one. This is the hardest game of the week for me.
Wow.
I think Notre Dame obviously is tired, and it showed in the second half against Louisville. USC is riding the tightrope, man. But if you're going to ride the tightrope, you might as well ride it with Caleb Williams. I think the more I thought about this, look, the USC, even if you're going to beat them, right? What's the minimum number of points they're going to score any given week against really anybody, even like an elite, like even if they were playing Michigan or Ohio State or somebody? What's the least number of points that they would score in a week, you think?
Probably like at least 27, probably.
Okay, so let's say 27 is like as absolutely awful a football game as they could play, or they only had the ball for like 18 minutes or something like that, right? So let's assume, let's say that's bare minimum. Let's say they'll probably be better than that, and let's just assume they'll get to 35 just because against anybody, right? And Notre Dame's defense is good, right? But USC is probably still getting to 35, even against USC. And because what would we think of Sam Hartman right now if it wasn't for that 4th and 16 run against Duke?
Yeah, that's true.
Because other than that run, over the last 3 weeks, I got nothing.
Yeah, they'd have 3 straight losses right now.
Their leading wide receiver, Mitchell Evans, is their best pass catcher right now. I think Tyree is their leading wide receiver. He has 15 catches. They just don't. Their wide receiving core. This Notre Dame team came in with a lot of hype, assuming that Hartman was the guy to come in and elevate him. And week to week, especially in these big games, he's looking more like that system guy at Wake Forest. And I hate to say that, he's obviously a good dude. He's a competitor. but it's not. He's not. He doesn't look any different than any other Notre Dame quarterback we've seen over the last decade. It's just not. They're not explosive, and you're facing the most explosive team in the country. Notre Dame is going to have to find a way to. There's one way: run the ball like crazy, get Estime untracked, right, and he's got to have $180, 200, maybe more. Estime's got to play the game of his life.
Yeah.
Their offensive line, other than Joe Alt, is kind of mediocre. It hasn't been. Joe Alt's the best tackle in the country, and nobody else on their line grades above a 71. So it's not this dominating offensive line like we thought it was. I think we've seen this now against better teams. Look, Ohio State's tough. We figured they would have a tough time against Ohio State. That might be the best front seven in the country. But Duke, for most of that game, was the more physical team. Last week, I didn't think Louisville was going to come out and out physical Notre Dame. And I know Notre Dame was gassed, but they did straight up. You have one of the 3 best backs in the country, and he had 10 carries for 20 yards. They got out physical by Louisville. Now, they probably won't get out physical by USC, but they need to be better across the board. This is starting to look like the same old Notre Dame team we've seen from the past decade. Good defense, pretty good line with 1 NFL tackle, maybe 2, but certainly a top 10 tackle. Run game, but they're just not explosive. Mitchell Evans at times is their offense.
Yeah.
And he's not like fast. He's a guy, he's like a kind of a classic tight end, kind of a two-way guy. Like he's good, but he's not fast. He's not explosive. And they just don't get Tyree and some of these guys the ball in space. And even down the field, Hartman's just not hitting them. He's got 10 turnover-worthy plays the last 3 weeks. Against the Power 5, he's got 10 turnover-worthy plays. I think that's 4 games, and completing only 58%. I went into this thinking I might pick Notre Dame, and I'm not going to do it. I think I'm going to go USC 35, Notre Dame 24. I just don't think Notre Dame, in all likelihood, functions offensively on a high enough level to keep up with this. Do we really, because the last 3 weeks, Notre Dame has scored, I believe it's 17, and 13 last week, somewhere around there. It's 20, 17, and 13.
Yeah, 2014, or 2021 and 14.
What part of Notre Dame, what about Notre Dame is it that we can expect them to win a game in the 30s or maybe even the 40s? I have no evidence that they can score like that.
Yeah.
And so I think USC, I think they hold off the warts for 1 more week. I have a feeling we're just not going to see that until we get to, I don't know if they play Washington State, but until they get to those other 2 big teams that we just talked about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. USC has Utah coming up after this Notre Dame game, and then they have Cal, and then they got Washington, Oregon, and UCLA back to close out the season. So, yeah, that'll be tough. But, yeah, man, for the second time, we're going to pick the underdog. I'm picking the underdog as well. I'm picking USC 34-31. I think USC's run game, we didn't even mention it, Marshawn Lloyd has been fantastic. Now, Notre Dame has a good run defense, but Marshawn Lloyd could present a new element that Notre Dame has. They can't just drop 8, because then Marshawn Lloyd can beat you on the ground, too, with how amazing he's been so far this season. And then, like you said, man, I mean, USC's defense is pretty soft in terms of the run defense, like we already talked about. In coverage, they're solid. They're a solid coverage team. They got Kalen Bullock in that secondary. Damani Jackson, their corner, I like a lot. Their sophomore corner. They're a solid enough. They're 25th in the Power 5 right now in terms of coverage grade. So coverage-wise, they're solid enough. So Sam Hartman, it's not like this is a USC defense that's vulnerable everywhere, and Sam Hartman could finally get back on track. He could have trouble with that USC secondary with all those guys they have there. And like I said, the lack of weapons that Notre Dame has too. So it's going to come down to Audric Estime. Really is going to come down to Audric Estime. And then the defense from Notre Dame forcing Caleb into a few mistakes too. Because I think that's the way Notre Dame can win this game. But like I said, I'm picking USC 34-31. I think Caleb and USC are going to put up points early. And then like we talked about in so many of these other games that we've reviewed before, Notre Dame might have to abandon the run just to keep up with USC pretty quickly. So I think USC is winning this game 34-31. And yeah, man, I got USC winning, and it should be an awesome, awesome game in South Bend. Another game between ranked teams that we got is number 25 Miami at number 12 North Carolina, which is at 7:30 p.m. on ABC. And Dawn, the biggest storyline is obviously how on earth does Miami respond to the most inexcusable loss in college football history?
On 6 days notice, I'm not really sure, because losses like that really, there's regular losses where it's the 24-hour rule, go to sleep, stew on it and move on, right? It's not a regular loss. These are the types of losses that they drag with you throughout the week of practice, right? Like, you're trying, especially to a team like Georgia Tech. Like, if it was Florida State, or if it was like a really, really good team, right? But there's games in this conference you can't lose if you want to compete. And despite, look, Miami, I'm going to be honest with you, the theme, obviously that's the headline. And It should be. When you have the game won, win it, okay? But the theme is situational football, okay? Between that, they went 1 for 4 in the red zone. They had 4 turnovers. Van Dyke was just, he was trying to fit balls into every window, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. There was a good chunk of this game that they lost. It was, the fact is, you shouldn't only, if you're Miami and you were number 17 in the country, let's just say they would have taken a knee and won the game. You still would have only beat Georgia Tech 20-17.
Right.
Okay. They did not play particularly well in this game, front to back, which should have put more emphasis on, boy, let's just get out of here with a win.
Yeah.
Now, to me, it would be hard for me to believe they didn't ruin this team's psyche with a loss, because now you go, even if they run the table and their one loss is Georgia Tech, let's just say Miami had playoff hopes. Would a loss to Georgia Tech get you into the top 4 as your only loss? If you beat North Carolina, Florida State, and maybe, I don't know, Duke, whoever they play in the ACC title game, whoever, for Florida State twice. Is it too much to overcome, especially when they lost this game situationally, sort of, and they didn't play well, especially in the red zone. They were just awful. Van Dyke, down on the 18 or 20, throwing picks in the end zone when they could have just manufacture points. Like, between the 20s, he was great. And then he gets down in the red zone and he's just trying to fire balls into windows. I know he's got a cannon, but we can't have this. So that's the biggest story going into this, is where Miami is at mentally. Mm-hmm. If we get into, okay, let's overlook it for a minute and go, they should have won the game and they should be 6-0 and this and that. Why is Miami better this year? Okay. Why is Van Dyke better this year? To me, this is where I was going to go before we had all this nonsense against Georgia Tech, is Miami's pass protection last year was 58th, okay, in the FBS. This year, they're the 8th best pass protecting team in the country, all right? Why is that important? Because Tyler Van Dyke does not move.
Yeah.
Okay. I've said it before. He probably reminds Miami fans a lot of Vinny Testaverde, man. Probably. He's old school. He's a statue. It's stand back there, stand still, protect me, give me all the space I need, and I got an absolute cannon, and we're going. We're going 25 yards down the field every play if we can, right? As a vertical passer, okay, and the arm talent, this guy is going no later than the 3rd round, right? It's a different motion. I think Van Dyke has an even better arm, but I remember like Ryan Mallett, right? Statue, huge arm. There's going to be a coach in the NFL that goes, oh boy, I can work with this guy. Like, I don't, even something like, and I know he's playing like an MVP level guy right now, but like something in the style of like Jared Goff, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't move a ton, protect him, can make every throw on the field. Okay, that's Tyler Van Dyke. Can they protect him in this game? They haven't played an elite pass rushing team yet. A&M had to blitz him a lot, and he beat it. They protected it, and he beat it. He's only been pressured. Here's the pressure in their 5 games this year. How many times has he been pressured? 4, 8, 3, 2, 9.
Wow.
He's just nobody's touching him. Nobody's touching him, and right now he's the 4th best clean pocket quarterback in the country. Okay, if you don't get to this guy, he's going to let it rip. He's going to play 7-on-7, and he's not going to sit there and dink and dunk you and do Tom Brady's 6 yards to Edelman all day. He is letting it rip. Okay, 2 big things for UNC in this game. 1, Kamon Rucker right now is the best pass rusher in the ACC, 84 pass rushing grade. 2, I didn't realize this with North Carolina. They've only given up 2 passing touchdowns, and they were both to App State in week 2, and they're giving up a 64.7 passer rating, which I think only Penn State is better.
Wow.
Their secondary, they are keeping it. They are keeping it in front, and I know they haven't played like great passing teams, but even like Syracuse is, you've got Schrader and everything last week. They only gave up 7 points, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. You've got a team right now. The fun matchup in this is, 1, if Miami's pass protection is real against an admittedly very good North Carolina defensive line. And 2, you've got the 8th best team in covering deep balls against the 6th best team throwing them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's where it's at for me, is if you leave Van Dyke back there, because last week, honestly, 3 of his 4 turnover-worthy plays were in a clean pocket too. Okay, so sometimes this is a guy who believes in his arm, man. I'm not kidding. He will rifle balls into windows that 95% of guys won't even try. But he can only make those throws if he's protected. So the first place I'm looking is Kamon Rucker and UNC's defensive line. If you can disturb Van Dyke, then he starts doing things he shouldn't have, or he starts taking sacks because he doesn't move at all. I think the difference in mobility between these two quarterbacks is going to be a theme here.
Yeah, definitely, man. And yeah, like we said before, like that inexcusable loss to Georgia Tech, where if you lived under a rock, Miami had the ball, 3-point lead, under 40 seconds left. Georgia Tech had no timeouts. Most coaches, as they should, would kneel the ball, clock would expire. Instead, they ran it, fumbled it. Georgia Tech got the ball, scored a game-winning touchdown. Now you got to rebound quickly, man. North Carolina, first time in 26 years that North Carolina is 5-0 to start the season. Since 1997 was the last time, before I was even born, was the last time North Carolina was 5-0 to start the season. My big matchup is on the other side of the ball. It really is, can Miami slow down Drake May? Because if you slow down Drake May, game over. You look at the UNC offense right there, 9th in passing grade, 40th in rushing grade, tied for 55th in receiving grade. They're also 55th in pass blocking grade, and they're 118th in run blocking grade. This is a lot like the conversation we had with the Penn State Nittany Lions and Drew Aller. Drew Aller playing lights-out football right now for Penn State. Drake May playing lights-out football for UNC. If either one of those quarterbacks is off his game, it's going to be a lot of trouble for that offense to have any sort of success because that offense is so reliant on Drake May. And, there are a few quarterbacks I'd rather have to rely on than Drake May right now, because right now his 92.4 grade over the last 2 seasons leads all quarterbacks in the country, even higher than Caleb Williams, who is 0.1 points off him right now. Miami, though, has a really damn good defense. Miami, 2nd best run defense grade in the country at 92.5, which places even more pressure on May to shoulder the load offensively. Also, Miami has the 10th best pressure rate in the country at 39.8%. And we mentioned already, North Carolina is 55th in pass blocking grade right now. Now, of course, Miami's coverage unit has been just about average so far this season, but last week, All-American safety Cameron Kitchens returned from his injury as well. So that's a big get for Miami in this game. So I think Miami defensively can match up pretty well with North Carolina offensively, who of course now has Tez Walker to add to that receiving core. So that receiving grade might go up a lot probably. But still, man, I think Miami's defense could make this a ball game, man. And like I said, if you get Drake May off his game and if he's not having a great game, North Carolina is going to really struggle offensively because they don't really have too much else that they can rely on right now. But ultimately, Dalton, who are you rolling with in this ACC game?
This is a weird one. This might be the weirdest one
Yeah.
because I would have really liked to have seen Miami go into this game undefeated,
Right.
and not coming off all of that and charged up even on the road and playing well. And Tyler Van Dyke has been so good, and you throw that wet towel on it, and it's so hard for me to pick Miami because I'm not going to do it when Drake May is such a constant. Like, I think you just hit it right on the head, where North Carolina's football team is like solid.
Mm-hmm.
The solid team, right? Like they don't have quite the weapons like they did last year, Josh Downs and all that. And their defense is good. It's not Bama, it's not Michigan, it's not UCLA. We'll get to that. And but the plan is play solid football and let Drake be Drake, right? And that's gotten him this far. Best start since you've been alive, you said, right?
Yeah.
It's gotten him this far. Drake May, the arm, the legs, the everything. You just made, if there was ever an argument for them to clip and go, why should this guy be probably the number 2 overall pick? You just made the argument. That was it. He's taken what's probably on the whole a B football team and made them look like an A football team. Mm-hmm. That's what great quarterbacks do, right? Miami, they can totally play with them. The one other issue I have with Miami is kind of level of competition stuff, and I know they put it up on Texas A&M, but otherwise you've got like Georgia Tech and Temple and just soft. It's been soft since the Texas A&M game, so it's hard for me to gauge how good, especially their defense. They've played some bad teams. I want to say Akron might have been in there too, or somebody like that. It's been a soft schedule outside of the A&M game, and A&M they blitzed Wegman like crazy. I think it was 60% of the time they blitzed him and just kept going, and A&M still put up 33 points on him. So Van Dyke was just better because A&M didn't get to Van Dyke at all. I'm going to take North Carolina. They're at home. They're the undefeated team now with more at stake. Okay, not that Miami doesn't have their whole season at stake, because now you gave away your margin for error. Okay, big time college football, playoff type, or even New Year's Six type of college football. You get one loss, especially for the playoff. You get one, and you gave that one away, and now you have to run the table against this. And a week later, you have to go into Chapel Hill against Drake May and all of this. And Tez Walker, I like that you mentioned Tez Walker too. Clearly a shot of adrenaline just having him out there, right? Last week, 6 catches, I think, for only 43 yards, which in and of itself, isn't crazy, but it's a shot of adrenaline after all this fighting they've been doing. And we've been talking about their receivers dropping balls for weeks, right? He's got terrific hands. He's 6'2" and 200. It's weird. He's like 6'2", but he's got a stride, like a long stride when you watch his Kent State tape, like he's 6'5". Like, he's this long stride. Like, if he looked like last week, he was he was getting his feet wet right back on the field. Got to get in shape a little bit. The sooner he gets in like game shape and really gets it rolling, the more dangerous North Carolina is going to be. I don't know if that'll be this week, but Miami, this is a step up. This is easily the best team they've played this year.
Yeah.
And look, Texas A&M is pretty good, but they game planned so properly for Texas A&M, and Van Dyke had the best game of his career. I think it's the mental aspect. I think I would still pick North Carolina to win this game, but it would be wicked, wicked tight. I'm going to say 34. Let's say 34-26 for North Carolina. I just think Drake May is such a constant, and this Miami team now. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be the story of college football.
Yeah.
We were supposed to end Saturday talking about Texas, Oklahoma, and those other games we previewed last week, right? And it was supposed to be, okay, how's the Big 12 shaping out? Mm-hmm. And now we've got the story of college football this past week was Miami giving away a game to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And that weighs on you. Losing a game like that weighs on you. It weighs on you all the way to probably today's Wednesday. I would bet it weighs on them until about today, and then they have to okay, we got to turn around and go to Chapel Hill. It's so hard to get back off the mat after a regular loss where you got outplayed is what it is. Mm-hmm. To get off the mat from a game like that and then have to go, they're not going out here getting to play Virginia Tech.
Right.
They can bounce. This is now your season. And it was kind of like your season anyway, but like a loss at North Carolina is your first loss. There's no shame in that. It's Drake May. Now it's like, I don't know how they recapture it. I'm going to take North Carolina 34-26, and I just think that mental edge is it's going to be a huge difference.
Interesting, man. I'm actually, for the third time in a row, I am going to ride with the away team. I'm picking Miami in this game. I think Miami gets back on track. I was with you. Originally, when I started previewing these games, I thought to myself, okay, I'm probably going to pick North Carolina because, like you said, that mental aspect is tough for me to get over. But like I said before, North Carolina is so reliant on one guy. Now, of course, that one guy is better than most in college football right now. But at the same time, I think Miami, like I said before, with USC and like I said before with Oregon, I think Miami can win in a number of ways offensively. And I think their run game has been really, really solid. Like you mentioned before, the offensive line has played really well. Van Dyke has been slinging it. The receiving core has played really well too. Xavier Restrepo, their slot receiver, is one of the highest grade receivers in the country right now. And then defensively, like I said, Miami's been unreal in terms of run defense. They've been great in terms of pass rushing. And North Carolina could struggle in terms of blocking. Their offensive line has struggled in terms of blocking, period, mainly in run blocking. So, I think that Miami can get pressure on Drake May. They can stop that run game altogether. And then the secondary, again, it's not great, but you get Cam Kitchens back. And the North Carolina receiving core, even with Tez Walker, isn't anything to write home about, really. It's going to be all on Drake May's shoulders. I think Miami responds in a big way, and I think they win this game over North Carolina. I got 30-28. I think Miami gets them back on track, and North Carolina's undefeated season ends at the hands of the Hurricanes. So I'm excited for that game, man. We got another big contest as well in the SEC this time. Missouri at number 24, Kentucky, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on SEC Network. This is a third 7:30 kick that we have in this preview, Dalton. There's no noon kicks that we have in this preview. So it is a loaded night slate. We still have one more game at night that we're previewing as well. But ultimately, Dalton, the big storyline is which team gets back on track, man. Both of these teams started off the season 5-0. Both of them suffered their first loss this past weekend. Missouri was on the losing end of a 49-39 shootout with LSU. Kentucky's loss, not nearly as close. They got blown out of the water by Georgia, 51-13. The winner of this game gets the season back on track and has an argument with Tennessee as the second best team in the SEC East. The loser of this game has basically all of the hype from their 5-0 start evaporated with two straight losses. So ultimately, Dawn, what are you looking forward to most in this SEC East clash?
Let me just point out that it's just awful that Missouri is not ranked and Kentucky still is.
I agree.
That's horrendous. I just noticed that on the screen now, and I didn't notice that on the back end of the rankings. That's awful.
Yeah.
I don't.
Missouri still ranked too. Yeah.
I don't care that it's Georgia. They went in there and got blasted. I'm just going to rank because I know Missouri's been like our favorite team on this show. We've been all over Brady Cook and Luther Burden and Kirby Moore. I don't if it's us. Are we talking about them too much or what? Because look, the score says they lost by 10. They lost that game by 3.
Yeah,
let's just be real about it.
Yep.
They did. They lost the game by 3. Brady Cook picked 6 end of the game. Cool. Okay. The Kentucky. This is another soft competition one. Okay. Before they beat Florida. Okay. To me, the opinions on Kentucky are tilted by Ray Davis doing what he did against Florida. Their defense got just, we think of Mark Stoops and Kentucky's defense. They just got absolutely blasted last week. And there was no evidence. We didn't have really any evidence that Carson Beck was going to go in there and just start lighting them up. Kentucky's defense, we were figuring, okay, Georgia's going to win the game, but it's still going to be kind of rock fight-ish, right? I don't know if Kentucky's defense on the back end is going to look like that. They're going to have problems with Missouri because let's be real. Outside of really for the first 58 minutes, okay, of the Missouri LSU game, all right, Brady Cook went toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels.
He did.
And Jaden Daniels is playing as well as any quarterback in the country right now. Throw him in the Heisman race too, okay? For 58 minutes before the strip sack and the pick six, you look at that game and you go, wow, these are two even quarterbacks, and these are two nasty, nasty offenses. Missouri did not lose because they were like so much worse than LSU. Look, the 10-point score tilts it big time, okay? They really lost by 3 in a game. Look, Daniels and Neighbors and Thomas are just a buzzsaw, man. Okay, and Missouri's defense is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And even they just can't. Right now, those 3 guys, I mean, I don't know how many teams even have a chance to cover LSU right now, plus Daniel's feet. So I'm giving their defense is getting a pass. You give up 42 to LSU. LSU, other than the first game, they're putting up 42 on everybody right now. Jaden Daniels on a crazy level throwing the ball down the field. Now, Kentucky has 2 problems. Defending the deep ball.
Yep.
Well, they have 3 problems, but 2 of them on defense. Defending the deep ball, okay? Over the last 3 weeks, 41.8 grade on deep balls, okay, in coverage. Not good. And they're the 6th worst team in the Power 5 covering screens. They get beat in the screen game a lot. They sit back, they play a lot of zone coverage, a lot of deep cover 3, cover 4. They don't man-to-man, they don't press. They sit back in relatively basic zone coverages. And if you want yards after the catch, that's where this train started for Georgia last week. You look early in the game, flats and screens, and just take the 8 to 9 yards they give you. And the second those linebackers move up, boom, Carson Beck right over the top of them. That simple. They don't defend the screen game well at all, in part because, honestly, it kind of looks like they don't try to. They're like content to just, here you go, 8 yards is fine. We'll just hold you to a field goal. It's this bend but don't break thing. And the problem is if you bend enough against a team, especially like Georgia or even a team like Missouri's offense, you're going to snap. Let me get back to those 2 numbers on Missouri. 3rd best deep ball team in the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 2nd best receiving grade on screens. We've mentioned Luther Burden.
Yep.
And they've got other guys like Johnson can get downfield and Weiss can do some things. Burden is the perfect example, of course, of they can beat you at all levels. Screens and jet sweeps and things like that, nasty. Intermediate, I believe he's still the best intermediate receiver in the country. You want to get behind those linebackers on a deep over, like Georgia did on their first touchdown last week, Burden can get it. And then over the top, the speed's crazy.
Yeah.
Missouri does the things offensively that are going to bother Kentucky. So those are the 2 on defense. And then there's 1 on offense. And I'm just going to be straight up with this. Kentucky can't throw the ball.
Yeah.
They can't. Ray Davis had the 280 against Florida. He had 100-plus, I think, against it was Ball State. And his 4 other games, he's under 80 yards. So if Ray Davis isn't superhuman, 8-10 yards a carry, they are dysfunctional throwing the football. I'm going to throw a scary stat at you, okay? So over the last 3 weeks, right, so now Kentucky's been playing, Vandy, Georgia, and Florida, their SEC games, right? Brady Cook over the last 3 weeks, passing grade is a 90.2, 3rd or 4th best in the country. Devin Leary's is 64.1. And I have a worse one, okay? He's only completing 45.9% of his passes.
Wow.
Right? And even worse than that, if I take out screens, where he's obviously 12 to 13 on screen passes, the last 3 weeks on non-screen passes, he's 23 for 62, which is 37%.
Jeez.
He is, if you take out the screen game, because every college team throws screens into different effectiveness, that's about your athletes and other stuff. If you look at Devin Leary over the last 3 weeks, even though they're 2-1 in those 3, I'm not. They must not have any other options. I'm 30. He's completing 37% of his real passes right now,
dude.
And that's you. They're actually just not functional in the past. They're not even functional. Like we talk about, like Caleb Williams struggling and he's gunslinging and doing the little grades are low. Sam Hartman. Let's take Sam Hartman for Notre Dame. He's at least functional.
Yeah.
Right? Like 60-something grades, and it's conservative, but their receivers aren't great. gritting it, right? They're trying to grit it, and it's like, there's only so far you can. This isn't even functional, their passing game. I mean, their offense really is just, and they're not the best run blocking team by any means.
No, they're not. No.
Their offense really is just, well, let's just see if Ray Davis can break a million tackles. Like honestly, other than Ray Davis against Florida, what do we have in Kentucky's offense?
Yeah,
because he's only got one other 100-yard day. They have 4 non-offensive touchdowns this year, and before Florida, the other teams they had played are just horrible. Ball State, I told you, against Eastern, it took them almost an entire first half to score on Eastern Kentucky. I graded their offense in that game.
Yep. And
for 3 quarters of it, I was like, wow, I'm worried about Kentucky. What is going on here? Like, this is just not – their passing game is dysfunctional. And Missouri's passing game, let's just say it for what it is. We've seen enough. I know LSU can't cover, but we've seen it for 6 weeks. Missouri's passing game is elite.
Yeah.
I don't know how in the world Kentucky, on top of Kentucky's defense, they have the 7th most missed tackles in the Power 5. So, like, you can already see where I'm going with this.
Yep.
I don't know. Kentucky's defense is going to have to turn around real quick against another big-time offense. Look, we've said it enough times. I'll just say it again. Missouri's offense is big time, big time. It's egregious that they're not ranked.
Yep.
And they did not. Brady Cook, the last 2 minutes fell apart. For 58 minutes, Brady Cook against LSU was spectacular. And Jaden Daniels was just a tiny, tiny bit better. This Missouri team is here to stay, and I think that includes this week, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I still have Missouri in my top 25, like I said, man. And yeah, you broke it down really well. I mean, this is really the matchup is 2 teams with drastically different offensive identities face vulnerable defenses. Like you mentioned, Brady Cook is 16th right now in the country with an 87.7 grade. Luther Burden III. I mean, we have talked about this guy, I think, since we started doing a show together, man. He has been unbelievable, the best receiver in college football. Leads them in receiving grade, also leads them in terms of receiving yards. Missouri, 12th in the country in terms of pressure rate allowed. So not only do you have this electric group of receivers and Brady Cook playing the best football he's played in his life so far, you have an offensive line that is giving him time back there. Javon Foster has been one of the best offensive tackles in college football. Connor Tollison has been one of the best centers in college football. This offensive line overall is doing really, really well. Kentucky, 71st in the country in pass rushing grade and 50th in coverage grade so far this season. Now, Deion Walker, their interior defensive lineman, has played really well, but other than that, man, they can't get any sort of pressure on the quarterback. And like you mentioned, the coverage unit, not great either. Now, the one saving grace maybe for Kentucky in this game is, you mentioned before, Ray Davis. He has the 5th most yards after contact in the Power 5, the 3rd highest rushing grade in the Power 5. Missouri just gave up 291 rushing yards to LSU on nearly 7 yards per attempt as well. And LSU, like we mentioned, is more of a pass-heavy team than a run-heavy team, and yet they still ran for nearly 300 yards on 7 yards per carry against Missouri. So that Missouri run defense is not as stout as we might think, and Ray Davis, man, could have a big game. And that's, I think, the only way Kentucky can win this game is if Ray Davis is superhuman. We mentioned this last week against Georgia, where it's like, yeah, your offense is Ray Davis, man. If he's not going, you're screwed. So ultimately, Dalton, who's coming out on top in this SEC East game?
So a couple things. I'm not as down on Missouri's defense because that's more, LSU is just a buzzsaw, man. And so much of that comes from Daniels. There are very, very few players in college football right now harder to defend than Jaden Daniels. That's a game where I can give him a pass on that. When you play LSU, it makes it all the more impressive what Florida State did to him back in week 1. I think they only give up 3 points in the second half, right? That's just what Jaden Daniels has going right now. It is going to put him in some serious conversations, both in the Heisman race and in the draft. Yep. Honestly, he's obviously not as big, but he has a very Jalen Hurts feel to me.
Yeah, I like that.
He doesn't give it away. Right now he's taking his shots, which there were times when Jalen Hurts wouldn't take his shots down the field, but also this receiving core is nuts. It feels very, I'm going on a rant now. It feels very Jalen Hurts to me, where you go, boy, we forgot how good this guy is. And that feels like a similar thing where Hurts went in the second round, and if you do some right things with it, Jaden Daniels is going to be the fun name to watch come draft time, because I know a lot of other guys have been getting run. Missouri's defense gets a pass from me, though. That dude's elite, and he's raging hot right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to bust Missouri's defense for that, okay? And it's polar opposite what's going on in Kentucky, okay? Second thing, I realized it this morning. Missouri's the best run-blocking team in college football right now?
Yeah.
You mentioned Javon Foster. He's been doing this to some extent for like 3 years now. Mm-hmm. Get this man in first-round conversations. This dude's an elite left tackle. I know we have Alt and Fashanu. He might be third behind them, and not a distant third. I'm serious. Watch this guy's tape. He does everything. And this year, you talk about, I think 2 years ago, he's great in pass protection, had to work in the run game. Last year was like better in both. He was like a top 15, somewhere in there, 15 or 20. This dude's elite, man. Get this guy in first round conversations, Javon Foster. But the difference in this game to me, I've got one team really that I believe is borderline elite offensively, and I've got another that outside of one guy is dysfunctional. You mentioned the rushing yards. A lot of that's Jaden Daniels. Devin Leary doesn't move.
Yeah.
So he both doesn't move, and he's completing 37% of his passes. I can't pick that guy over an offense like this. And Missouri's, I'm telling you, Missouri's defense is still like pretty good. It's at least like a B defense. It's not Bama or one of these. It's pretty good. I think they're going to get the job done. I'm not sure this game is all that close. The more I think about it, I'm going to say 34 to 20. I'll give Kentucky 20, and I'm not even sure how they'll get there. I'll go 34 to 20 Missouri, because unless they are drastically better in the secondary, especially after last week. But they gave up 28 points to Vanderbilt too. Mm-hmm. Unless they're drastically better in the secondary, because Kirby Morris still has this thing rolling. They should feel offensively, Missouri should feel no less confident than they did before last week. They put up 39 points on LSU. They got the job done.
Yep.
All right. Kentucky, I don't know why they're ranked. I have no idea. I'm going to be honest with you. Beating Florida, Florida plays up and down to everybody, and their front seven just handed them yards. They were all over the place mentally. Give me Missouri 34 to 20. I think you're going to see this is too stark a difference offensively for me to go the other way on this.
That's fair. And first of all, I want to touch on a couple things real quick what you said, because it really made my brain start jogging a little bit. But the one thing is, the rushing yards, like you said, Jaden Daniels had 130 rushing yards in that game. Devin Leary is not that type of mover. And that's also because a lot of the times Missouri's dropping a ton of guys into coverage to try to even, deal with the two receivers and Jaden Daniels. And then all of a sudden
you have to. Well, how else would you play LSU other than what right now? You almost have to let them run the ball.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I agree. The other thing I wanted to touch on, because I think you just unlocked one of the best comps that I've heard so far in this whole draft process is, and I know it's lofty considering how good this guy is in the NFL right now, but I love the Jaden Daniels to Jalen Hurts comparison. And I know this is a tangent. We're not even talking about LSU in this preview, but I wanted to go off on a little bit, because you look at that man, Jaden Daniels, when he started off his career at Arizona State, was let's face it, terrible passer. Jalen Hurts, when he started off at Alabama, he could only run the football too. So he was not a guy that could throw the football. Then, they continued to progress. Jaden Daniels at Arizona State was not a very good passer. Hurts at Alabama, never really a good passer. Transfers to Oklahoma, is an elite passer all of a sudden. Jaden Daniels transfers to LSU. All of a sudden, last year, still a great runner, progressing as a passer, got a lot better as a passer. This year, he's one of the best pocket passers in college football. You look at Jalen Hurts now, he's one of the best passers in the NFL right now. So I love that comparison, man, where they both were bad passers.
There's a big common denominator between the two of them, and this is going to come up. Trevor and whoever else is going to bring this up come draft time. They are two of the elite since we've had PFF college since 2014 or 15. I believe Jaden Daniels, has the best turnover-worthy play percentage that we have charted since we started doing this. And it might be Jalen Hurts' record that he broke. It's close. And Jalen Hurts is somewhere in that top 5. These two guys, when you don't give the football away at this level, you're really good. Like you more. So last year we were waiting on, I think Daniels only made like 12 or 13 big time throws. You can wait on that because he doesn't lose you ball games. I'm telling you, he's not as thick. It's a little different style. Daniels is a little more wiry and quick, whereas Hurts has just got the 700-pound squat that's going to run you over, right? Even now with the quarterback sneak every other play. But this turnover-worthy play thing and how low Daniels' number is and breaking the record like that's going to be massive. When you get an NFL coach that gets Daniels and they go, well, this guy is smart with the football. How do we make him lethal? Well, right now he looks lethal. Yeah. I give Missouri's a pass, but their defense a pass because I don't the way they're playing now. Week 1, when it was Florida State, I had an answer. It was sit back and make Daniels throw from the pocket in Florida State. Now, oh no! If they played Florida State now, I don't know who would win.
Yeah. That's a good point. And that's a great point you made too, man. It's because, last year he got a lot better as a passer, but just not putting the ball in harm's way. But like you said, he did not, his average depth of target was one of the lowest in the country. This year, all they're doing is taking deep shots, and he's hitting on almost all of them right now. So, I know we went off on a tangent there, but when you said Jalen Hurts, it just made my brain start jogging, like I said, and I love that comp, man. Now, I don't think Jalen Daniels, or Jalen Hurts, will take the hits as Jayden Daniels does, where it seems like every week Jayden Daniels is getting lit up because of the way he runs the football. And like I said, Jalen Hurts is too big and too strong to be lit up like that. But I still love the comp, man, for just how they've progressed. And every year of their careers, they've gotten better. And even Jalen Hurts from Alabama to now, every single season, he's gotten better as a quarterback. Jayden Daniels is the same way, man. So I love that comp. But I got Missouri. Just going, that tangent was long, but I love that comp that you made, man. But I got Missouri as well in this one. 30-24. I think Missouri's offense is just too explosive for Kentucky in this game. I just don't see, other than Ray Davis having 250, I don't see how Kentucky's offense is going to be able to keep up in this game, especially when Kentucky's defense is struggling the way it is. But the last one that we're going with is the Pac-12 at night. It's not a 10:30 game. It's still an 8 o'clock game, but it's number 18 UCLA at number 15 Oregon State. And what I find most interesting about this game, Dalton, these two teams are kind of like the inverse of each other, because you look at they're both 5-1 right now. Oregon State 5-1, their best win of the season was over Utah. Then they also lost to Washington State. You look at UCLA, also 5-1, their best win of the season was to Washington State, and their only loss was to Utah. So UCLA beat Washington State and lost to Utah. Oregon State beat Utah and lost to Washington State. So it's pretty interesting how these two are the kind of the inverse of each other. And I think the winner of this game will establish itself as one of the next level of contenders, with probably Utah after the big three, of course, of Oregon, Washington, and USC. The loser of this game has their second conference loss of the season, and that all those lofty dreams of a Pac-12 title game, they're all but gone now after losing 2 conference games already so far in the season. So ultimately, Dalton, I think there is one clear matchup that I cannot freaking wait to watch in this game. I think is the best matchup, honestly, of the weekend. Is it the matchup that you're going to go with as well?
You already know it's trench warfare, man. Yeah. You've got the Oregon State with the highest graded offensive line in the country against UCLA with, as a unit, the 6th highest graded defensive line in the country, and Laiatu Latu is the best defensive player in the country right now. Look, he was an absolute nightmare last week against Washington State. 10 pressures, a sack, I believe a forced fumble. That unit was the difference in their game. They pressured Cam Ward on 51% of his dropbacks. It's just their defensive line. Look, their defense was not like when they lost to Utah, was not horrible. They gave up 21 and they got slow grinded to death because they the picks. I'm mixing it up. Their defense only gave up 7 points to Utah. I'm thinking about Oregon State or something else. They gave up 7 points to Utah in that game. Dante Moore threw the pick 6 the first play of the game. You just can't get behind the 8 ball against Utah. Don't go down 7-0 on the first play of the game at Utah. Yeah, that's a rule. That's our number one rule. I want to put it on a board behind you. But you know, this is fun because you've got a team. Clearly, I think the best defense in the Pac-12, UCLA, right?
Agreed.
Right now they are the best pass rushing team in the country, the second behind Bama in coverage, and they're 11th in run defense. There is not a hole on this defense. They lost a game where they gave up 7 points, which it's disturbing. So right now, maybe sometimes the theory is the answer to some of these defensive lines. You're seeing it with, like, let's say, the Dallas Cowboys. That'll upset some people. But sometimes with defensive lines like this, running right at them is the answer. Just let's go. Let's go. You want to be the bigger man? Let's go. And there's no team that exemplifies that more than Oregon State. We are going to run off tackle with Martinez and Fenwick until the wheels fall off, right? The difference, maybe, we've talked before in past weeks about the inconsistent play of DJ Uiagalelei. So when they beat Utah, Utah's idea was let's line up and press man across the board. Let's just make everything flat. And let's see if he can throw over the top. Let's do it. And he made 3 or 4 throws on, like, go balls and deeper balls, right? Because if you're going to go press man, all right, cover one, let's go. You want to do it? And honestly, for a quarterback, that makes you more comfortable. These a go ball, people think it's hard. They got to throw it far. To be honest, a go ball for a quarterback, especially a struggling one, is one of the easier balls you can give them because it's just, well, let me just lay it out there. There's not a read to make. Let me just pick my favorite guy and lay it out, right? What you want to do is make him make reads. Maybe you do want to. It's kind of the inverse thing of, like, so then last week, right? They put up 52 points on Cal. He had the best game of his career, all right? 90-something, 93.8 passing grade. And they tried to blitz him. And against a blitz, 8 for 11, 116, 3 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, all right? They tried to blitz him. There's, like, all sorts of, for some reason, different ideas of how to play against Uiagalelei. I think the biggest thing is, obviously, that's why it's the biggest matchup. What can UCLA do to put them behind the sticks, right? If you make him, to a greater extent than, say, Bo Nix, make him just drop back and go non-play action, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Most weeks, he's scattershot. If he turned a corner against Cal, cool, but it's still Cal. Cal and UCLA's defense are 2 completely different animals. But as usual, Oregon State, they have a way of doing things. We're going to run off tackle. We're going to go play action. What I do like that I saw in this Cal game is, and I don't think we saw this in the early weeks, is they've kind of taken a lot of the reads out of it. Now, I'm not a big fan of the fact that he just, for as big and good an athlete as he is, he doesn't run the ball, like, at all.
Yeah.
I don't really get it. I would involve that more, but okay, you want him to sit in the pocket and do things cool. What I do like is that, in the win against Utah and this game against Cal, one read. You get one read, dude, and there's a lot of max protection. There's a lot of, like, only, like, 2 and 3 man concepts instead of sending all 5 out there. Like, when he has to make full field reads and, like, see a whole defense, everything starts to break down. And then even when he makes the right throw, he starts to miss it. They've simplified it, at least the last couple of weeks, to where they look better. Okay. And I don't know that he's fully turned a corner because that's Cal. And then they still went and gave up 40 points to Cal. So there's an element here where Oregon State's defense does have to be better, because 38 to Wazoo and 40 to Cal starts to make you concerned a little. Utah can't score. So give up 7 to Utah. They can't, on a Friday night, they can't score. This is going to be about Oregon State and their run game, as it always is. We could do every Oregon State game every week, and we're going to say this. It's about the running game being ahead of the chains, especially against this team. If you let UCLA pin their ears back, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck, man. If you're in 3rd and 8, honestly, right now, the way their pass rush is, if you're 3rd and 8, you could almost punt on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Honestly. Seriously. I mean, but it's a great matchup of strength on strength, and 2 teams with shaky-ish quarterbacks for different reasons, right? Uiagalelei's whole career has been like this, and Dante Moore, same thing. Play action, deep shots, 3 big-time throws last week, but still a grade in the 50s because it's all over the place.
Yeah, he's a true freshman. Yeah, exactly.
Both of these teams have a certain way of doing things, And the fact that we get to see this is a low key, really fun matchup in the trenches.
Oh my God, yeah. Dude, this is the heavyweight title fight in the trenches, honestly. Like we mentioned before, Oregon State right now is the highest graded offensive line in the Power 5 this season. Also, third in the country in run blocking grade, ninth in the Power 5 with a 14.1% pressure rate allowed. The star of that unit is their right tackle, Talisa Fuaga, who I know for a fact Trevor Sikkema is all over right now. This is a guy who came out of nowhere for him. I had him as a top 10 tackle entering the season, and he's proving why right now, man. His 90.1 run blocking grade, 3.5 points higher than the next closest FBS tackle this season. He's the second highest graded tackle in the country after only Joe Alt this season. He'll often, hopefully, be lined up against Latu, and if not, it'll be the Murphy twins. Latu, the highest graded defensive player in the country, third or fourth best pressure rate in the country for edge defenders as well. And also UCLA's, in terms of the run defense, because you mentioned how good of a pass rushing unit they are, and they lead the Power 5 with an 89.8 pass rushing grade. In run defense, UCLA leads the country with a 2.77 yard average depth of tackle in the run game. So they have done a really good job of stopping the run this season. And like we said, this is the matchup to watch, man. I think it is the best matchup to watch all weekend because it is the strength of Oregon State is that offensive line, and the strength of UCLA is that defensive line, man. And each of those are among the best in the country at what they do. And there's an argument to be made that UCLA might have a top 3 defensive line in the country. Oregon State has a top 3 offensive line in the country. So it is going to be a war, absolute war in the trenches that I cannot wait to watch. But ultimately, Dalton, who do you have coming out on top in this Pac-12 game?
I'll tell you, you mentioned the Murphys. Gabriel Murphy had 8 pressures himself last week. Him and Latu combining for 18 pressures pretty much was the ball game, right? The other thing I want to mention about Fuaga, we need to start this campaign. Look, man, right tackles and left tackles, equal rights, man. I'm over
agreed.
This thing where people think left tackles are more important than right tackles.
No.
Fun fact, because I do the rookies piece every week. Check it out every Tuesday morning. Do you know who the highest graded rookie tackle is in the NFL this year is right now?
It's not Skoronski anymore, right?
He's a guard. He's playing guard.
He's playing guard for Tennessee. I did not know that. Okay, who is the highest graded tackle?
It's Darnell Wright, the one right tackle taken in the first round.
Huh.
I'm gonna go on 15 seconds about this.
Tristan Wirfs?
I'm over this thing where right tackles are more valuable than left tackles. Listen, Ryan Ramczyk, great player. Lane Johnson should go to the Hall of Fame. I don't know if there's a primary right tackle in the Hall of Fame, and if there's not, Lane Johnson should be the first one. He's just as valuable as anybody in football. Yep. Tristan Wirfs, when he was on the right side for 3 years, was arguably the best right tackle in football. Now he's on the left side, and it's exactly the same. Okay,
yeah.
I get that switching sides technique-wise is a thing, but there's no reason that if you have an elite right tackle, let's say like Fuaga, okay, and he's that good.
Yep.
Why is he not a first-round pick? They say right tackle like it's an insult. I'm over this. Mm-hmm. If you have a guy who's a great right tackle, cool.
Yep.
Like the Bears. The Bears needed a right tackle. They have Braxton Jones. They needed a right tackle. They took Darnell Wright. There's arguments about taking him over Jalen Carter. I get it. But as an offensive lineman, Darnell Wright was the guy they needed. So first of all, I need people on the boat, equal rights for right tackles.
I agree. I'm with you.
Back to the game. Sorry. I think there's a lot of weird variables in this game, especially the 2 quarterbacks, right? If Uiagalelei is as good as last week, they can beat a lot of people. They played Cal last week, and Cal, their defense just ain't there. It's just not, right? Right game plan, spectacular. If you're only going to have 25 dropbacks, that's as good as it gets, what Uiagalelei did last. 5 touchdowns, 4 or 5 big-time throws. Best game of his career, okay? Can he do that again? This is not the team you want to do that again against. I also trust obviously I trust UCLA's defense. I don't as much trust Oregon State's defense. Okay. They're going to have to get to Dante Moore when it comes time for Moore to make throws. And he can make big throws. The accuracy isn't there on the whole, and a lot of it's heavy play action, right? We've talked about Chip Kelly. Run it till you can't. Play action, Dante Moore, deep shot. For both of these teams actually They go about it schematically a little different. Obviously, Chip Kelly in the gun, tempo, all that stuff. Oregon State, tight ends, big linemen, under center. But they really have the same goals, despite going about it slightly different ways. UCLA's defense, I think, to me, is the difference. Oregon State, I think, just has an okay defense, right?
Yeah,
but again, I've seen them. They had the Utah game, but Utah can't score. Against Washington State was 38 points, and again, and explosive plays. And against Cal, gave up 40. Who Cal is, one of the few teams in this conference who's not considered like big time, right? I think UCLA has a few more holes to poke. Look, if Oregon State's going to win this game, yeah, it's going to be their offensive line just being better.
Yep.
But I think if you have an even matchup and UCLA does not get exposed on the back end like that either, not near as often, if at all. No. I mean, Utah didn't expose them deep. I'm just trying to think if the tape I've seen, if I've seen any deep shots on them. I really haven't. So UCLA doesn't give up big plays. Oregon State kind of does. And Dante Moore, if you give him an opportunity, if somebody has a step way down the field, he can get it there. Yep. We've talked about it. He's one of the best deep throwers in the country. Everything underneath is the question mark. Uiagalelei was great last week. He's never really been great 2 weeks in a row. I'm not going to trust it against this defense. This is going to be a fist fight. This is going to be a fun game. Give me UCLA 24-20.
Woo. I got UCLA 28-27. So just to recap, I am picking all 5 road teams, and all 5 of them are underdogs too. So if you're betting man, you might want to take the money line. At least that's what I'm doing this weekend. And also, this is a game that we're not even previewing. Texas A&M, Tennessee is probably the next biggest game of the weekend. I'm picking Texas A&M, the road team in that one too, is also the underdog. I don't know why I'm going against Vegas so much this week, but when I turn on the tape, man, I'm looking at the matchups in this game. I like the road team in every one of these, and I agree with you. I got UCLA winning this one 28-27. It's going to be a war at the line of scrimmage. I think UCLA just barely comes out on top in that war. But like I said, man, it's going to be an awesome week of college football. I'm taking every single underdog, every single road team in this game, which I know you did. I think you did that a couple weeks ago, right? And it did not work out very well for you.
Yeah, that week. Yeah, that included the week that I picked Kansas and Jalen Daniels was scratched 15 minutes before the game. Yeah, it was that week. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I'm doing it this week, and hopefully it goes a little bit better for me this week, man. But that's what we got for our Week 7 preview. No, it was a long episode, so big shout-out to Eli, producer Eli back there, for everything he does for the show, and mainly for the Byron Floyd graphic, which I don't know if you saw on Twitter, Dalton, but I posted on Twitter, and Floyd's family, his high school coach, Floyd himself, was all interactive. They loved it. That we put out a graphic of Byron Floyd, man. But we have another huge episode coming on Monday. Dalton and I giving out our mid-season awards for college football. Heisman, Blitnikoff, Coach of the Year, Broyles Award, the Ray Guy Award for Punter of the Year. We're giving out everything next week. So we're very, very excited about that. So make sure you tune in for that. But very awesome weekend of college football that we got. And that's what we got for our Week 7 preview. So for the GOAT producer back there, Eli, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. And have a great Saturday of college football, and we'll see you guys on Monday.